Welcome, everybody. We're very excited to have you here today for Zoo Adventures Begin at Your Library. We're excited to have you all. I'm Kathy Lancaster with the Library of Michigan, and we have some friends with us, thanks in part to the Institute of Museum and Library Services. We've got Nadia and Zara here from the Detroit Zoological Society, and I'm going to let them take it away with their presentation.
All right. Before we get started, we thought we would play into the theme a little bit and have our icebreaker be, what is the most adventurous thing you've done? So if you want to unmute and speak, you're more than welcome to. But if you want to just drop it in the chat, that is totally okay as well.
I see some fun adventures happening.
I saw a hot air balloon. That sounds familiar.
I know. Nadia and I were prepping our answers beforehand, and I told her that that was going to be mine, that I went on a hot air balloon ride.
Sounds amazing.
I want to know from Nicole, what's one of the most dangerous hikes in the US?
It's in Zion National Park. It's the Angel's Landing hike. So it's like, I think it's like grand total 5 miles, but the last half a mile is one of the most dangerous parts of the hike. And you're holding on to chains, but man, the views are beautiful.
Wow, something you have to take mental pictures of because you're gripping on for dear life, probably.
I actually have quite a number of photos, but I have what I consider an underdeveloped sense of danger. So I'm willing to take the risk to fall off a cliff to see something pretty, I guess.
All right, we have an adventurous group here. Nadia, do you want to share yours?
Sure. I was telling Zara that I have a deathly fear of heights. But I went to New Zealand and was given the opportunity to go skydiving, and I did it. Skydiving is definitely the most adventurous thing that I've ever done. And I would do it again if the views were as beautiful as New Zealand. Sign me up. Was I terrified? Absolutely. But it was worth it.
All right. So thank you all for sharing. Those are some cool adventures, some things I do want to try on there, and some things I have tried. I don't think I'll ever try skydiving, so that's out of the picture. And I don't think that hike is anything I'd ever do. But there are definitely some things that I am looking forward to trying, and I love the ideas. So we're going to go ahead and get started. This year's theme is Zoo Adventures Begin at Your Library, and we will be sharing science activities. My name is Zara. I'm a curator of education here at the Detroit Zoo, and then the person controlling the slides right now is Nadia, and she's one of our education specialists. All right, so we think this will take an hour. We'll see if we can get you out of here a little early, but we plan to do a quick introduction, go over the goals of the program, give you a theme overview, and talk about how it relates to your theme, introduce theme activities and model some of the activities, and then share with you the different resources that we have available or will have available for you to use both with this program and with some other programs. Other ways we can support you all in the work that you do, and then we'll leave time for questions at the end. So again, this is our third year partnering with the Library of Michigan. It's a great partnership. We really do enjoy the work we do. We love working with librarians. I always tell everybody else in our department who does not work with librarians, I'm like, you got to work with them. They're just so awesome to work with. They're on top of it. They're really appreciate everything you do. Just an awesome group of people who are really committed to bringing quality program. So we know that you all do summer reading every summer, and this will be our third year creating activities that align with the theme of summer reading. So again, the lessons align with the theme and have been developed for librarians' use. And we'll talk a little bit about this later on, but essentially everything that we create is yours to print out, replicate, use, however you want. You can use it for summer reading. You can use it for other times of the year. Everything is up there for you to use. All of our printables and all the lesson plans and everything will be put on a Google Drive. So that you have access to it, so that you could share access with other librarians who did not attend this training. And the activities that we do develop, we're committed to making sure that they're based in science, that they're teaching science principles, that they're hands-on, exciting, something you can do with a group of students or children who come to the library, and that they're limited materials. We understand budgets, so we wanted to make sure that we created things that you might already have the tools for, things like scissors, tape, that sort of thing, or things that can be bought for an affordable price so that they work with any library network. They are flexible, so they can be aged up, they can be aged down, they can be done as kits, they can be done as tabletop activities, they can be done as lessons. Because we don't know how you do your programming. So we wanted to create things that appeal to however you do your programming. The resources are not available right now, but they will be available by April 1st. We will share the Google Drive with Kathy, and she'll make sure that you all get access to everything then. Most of it is created, but we just want to give ourselves a chance to fine tune everything, make sure everything's on there before we share it out, so you're not constantly looking in the drive to see what's been updated and what's not. All right, so this theme it got us stuck for a very long time. We could not think of what direction to take with this, so we were thinking for a little bit, and then it made complete sense. Scientists, they're adventurous people. They take on so many different activities, conservation projects all over the world, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to highlight the adventure that is science. So again, all of these activities are STEM concepts and inspire science reading. And they talk about research that scientists do out in the field, whether it's with amphibians or penguins or polar bears. You'll see as we get into the activities, we are jumping all over the place and talking about a lot of different animals to bring it back to the theme of scientists go on adventures to study conservation. All right, so something exciting that we did this year that I'm really happy to try out is that instead of focusing on that kindergarten through second grade level that we've done in the past, we challenged ourselves to create things for all grade bands. So we still have that kindergarten to second, but we also included activities for 3rd through 5th grade, 6th through 8th grade, and then 9th through 12th, so that you have the option to do all the lessons, do some of the lessons, focus maybe only on high school, focus on middle school, however you want to do it. But there are varieties of activities for every grade band. All of our younger lessons do have options to age up the curriculum so that you can use it with slightly older students. So that's really cool. And each lesson is focused on a particular zoo resident species or a science concept. And this year we did not choose books for you all and recommend them, because we chose topics and we left the book choosing to you. We do want to highlight that this would be a really cool opportunity to bring to light nonfiction books that tell them more about the animals that they'll kind of get an introduction to. Or to talk about science researchers who are out in the field doing real work, kind of connecting back to the fact that scientists are adventurous people.
All right. Well, Zara mentioned the activities. They're all tied to activities here at the zoo or science here at the zoo. So we really wanted to make sure that we're focusing on STEM and trying to tie that in for all grade levels, and still keeping it adventurous to keep on theme. So this slide shows us our topics. So we have 4 topics this year for our grade band K through 2. The topic is population surveys. For 3 through 5, we have water quality. For 6 through 8, we have climate change, and 9 through 12th graders get animal genetics. So for each of the grade bands, we came up with 2 lessons or activities. And as Zara mentioned as well, they can be scaled up or down depending on who you are dealing with that day. And we have some recommended concepts for books as well. So even though we didn't go so far as recommending individual books, we do have topics that you can look into. For example, we know that our population survey lessons are all about penguins and giraffes. So that's a great opportunity to look into books surrounding those animals, especially nonfiction. If you have capacity to look into those, we feel like the connection there would be really direct and really meaningful for students. So we can do a deep dive into each of these. Population surveys, activities for grades K through 2. So population surveys are essentially a method of understanding how species are doing in the wild. So scientists might do this in jungles or on safari to make sure that ecosystems are doing well, make sure that species are where they're supposed to be, and even getting an idea of conservation efforts that may need to be taken to protect that species or keep them healthy in the wild. So we developed 2 activities. The first is the population count. So in this activity, participants are able to count the number of individuals in a photo. So we have a program all about penguins, and that is where we use photos from. So they'll see, I think we have a series of 7 pictures, and they get a chance to count how many individual penguins are in each photo. Again, an opportunity to scale it up would be kind of having them think about trends. So is there a difference in how many individuals you see in the photos? Why do you think that's happening? An opportunity to hypothesize. If you're pushing that kind of first or second grade band, there we go. That's an opportunity to make it a little more challenging for them. Our second activity is unique individuals. So this one is especially good for the lower grade levels because this is all about kind of pattern recognition and recognizing differences between animals. So the little blurb says that some species have features that are unique to individuals, like we have fingerprints. So that's an opportunity to make that connection with participants. And then they're able to match the spots to giraffes that are actually here at the Detroit Zoo. So here are some visuals of, the visuals of what we included in the activities. So the population count example is up here. You can see all those little Adelie penguins. So for the littles, this is a really great opportunity for them to practice counting. When we do this in person, we highly encourage using a small tool that helps them not to double count individuals. So it might look like bingo markers or buttons to help them kind of get a final count that is more accurate. And again, this comes in a series of 7 photos. So they have the opportunity to see changes in each photo and to continue practicing that counting. And then for unique individuals, you can see the hides of 3 different giraffes that we have here. So they are unique. You can see that some of them have some kind of speckling in their spots, and some of them have different coloration. So I'm just going to hop over so you can see the actual outline. Oh, I thought I had it pulled up. Let's see if I can share my other screen so you all can see. Doesn't look like it's working, so maybe we'll skip that one. But in that lesson outline, you have the opportunity to get to know the individual giraffes, so their names and what is unique about them. So we can see from this photo, the speckled kind of hide here is from a giraffe named Zara, not to be confused with our very own Zara, education curator. But again, that one is kind of a flashcard matching. So for lower grades, they're able to look at the series of photos, see a picture of the speckled hide, and then look for photos of that giraffe that they can match. So they get the speckled dots for Zara. They have this kind of caramel colored hide for I think this is Mapenzi. And then we have Jabari, who has the very dark brown coloration. So we compare that to chocolate in the lesson, and that's something that they can do as well. We're also having them look at size in this one. So we do have a baby giraffe, and that's something they can look for differences into. So where do they see the little giraffe? How do you know that it's different from the big giraffe or the giraffe that's speckled? Again, making those connections and noticing that differentiation. For our grade band 3 through 5, the focus is on water quality. Oh, Zara, did you have something to add?
I was gonna say, if you want to take a second, I can pull up the flashcards.
Thank
I'm ready to
you. I
share
thought I
them.
had it pulled up already.
No worries. Here we go. Let me know if I shared the right thing.
That's it. All right, so here you can see the flashcards, which is very helpful. Thank you, Zara. So again, looking out for the white spots for Zara. Can they find the picture of the giraffe that has the white spots? Looking at Kavuli, who has the caramel colored fur. Do they see more pictures of caramel colored fur, and where do they see them? And then Jabari with the dark chocolate covered fur. Where do we see the fur that is the darkest? Can you match the picture on the left to the picture on the right? And there we have baby Jehudi. Jehudi was born last fall. So he is an easy identifier. They are looking for the smallest giraffe. Where do you see the one that is tiny? And then another opportunity to scale it up, we also made these kind of worksheets. This one is for kind of the upper level of that grade band. If you feel like they need a challenge, they can make those observations themselves. So they're identifying what's special or unique about the spots. And then toward the end, we actually have a worksheet where they can connect the dots. There we go. So we figured this might be a challenge for kindergartners, right? But a second grader, if they need a little challenge, they can connect the dots so they can match the fur to the proper giraffe. Thank you, Zara. All right, let me share my screen again. And we can talk about grades 3 through 5. Perfect. All right. So like I said, grades 3 through 5 are all about water quality. We know that water is a necessity, but especially for animals who need it to live, right? Particularly amphibians who spend part of their life on land and part in water. So going a little more in depth about what makes water healthy and what differentiates between different kinds of water. So activity 1 is A and B, acid, neutral, base. In this activity, we encourage you all to have different kinds of liquids to identify the pH level and talking about what that might mean. So we have some example liquids that you can use, anything from lemon juice and coffee to soap and laundry detergent, having them identify where they fall within the range, having them identify whether it's an acid, a neutral substance, or a base/alkaline. And having them actually plot that down on a worksheet as well, which we will have ready when we share those resources in April. And then the second activity is turbidity, which not only is a super duper fun word, but is a cool concept as well. So turbidity is essentially the clarity of water. So we know that some water sources can be cloudier than others. And it's a tool that we use. It's called the Secchi disc. You can see here. And they'll use that with a liquid to determine the turbidity of the water, to determine how cloudy it is. So the higher the turbidity, the cloudier the water is. It's a little easier to distinguish with visuals. So here we go. On the left, we have that pH scale. So this is kind of an outline of what the worksheet looks like for that pH activity. So over on the left-hand side, they would write down what part of the scale they're identifying. So they should have acid up here, the neutral, and the base/alkaline range, excuse me. And then depending on what substances you choose to use, however they identify the liquid is where they'll plot it down, right? So if they have lemon, we know that that's an acid. Did their litmus paper tell them that it was pH level 2 or 3 or 4? They would plot that down here. The goal, we ideally would recommend having at least 2 of each. So 2 acids, a neutral substance, 2 bases or alkaline liquids, just so they get a better idea of the range. And then we also have a resource that tells you some different liquids that are part of the entire scale. So everything from 0 through 14, so they can get a better gauge of what they all look like, as opposed to just having a few in each section. And then this is that turbidity scale I was talking about to measure the clarity of water. So essentially you would have water in a cup, a glass or plastic cup, and you would set the cup on top of this circle. This is the Secchi disc. So they would be able to determine how much of that black and white that they can see in order to determine the turbidity of the liquid. So if I set a clear glass of water on top of this, I know that I can see through it. I can see the black and white perfectly fine. It would be a 0 JTU. But if I had a cup of really muddy, murky water, I might not be able to see those as well, right? So you get a higher cloudiness or a higher turbidity. So I think these go really well together. I feel like they complement each other really well. And it's just a good way to talk about how animals need clean water as well.
Nadia, these discs are printable, correct?
They sure are, correct. So the actual Secchi discs are pretty expensive. We actually did a field trip with students and they're huge. They're like a tire size. So in real life, scientists would use this tool on a boat. They lower it into the water and they actually measure by meters. So they're looking at the turbidity 10 meters down, 20 meters down to see a point at which they can no longer see that black and white pattern to determine kind of the health of the water and where it starts to get murky. So that's a comparison that you can make as well to relate it to actual science in the field. All right, on to climate change for grades 6 through 8.
All right, I'll take over here. So for 6 through 8, we focused on climate change and talking about how the Earth's temperatures are changing and how that impacts animals that live in the Arctic, specifically polar bears. So the first activity, you go on to the next slide. Thank you. The first activity looks at ice coverage, and it'll have participants determine trends in Arctic ice coverage by counting sea ice across various years. So they'll have 5 data sets starting from 1980 up to 2020 and looking at how the ice changes over the years by counting. So again, this is a counting activity, but because it's 6th through 8th grade, we have added the graphing element where they'll be creating either a line graph or a bar graph to see the trend over time. And think about how that impacts polar bears. So this is where books really come into play, because if they check out some books, some nonfiction books about polar bears, they can learn how bears use the ice and depend on the ice to hunt and how that's impacted by reduced ice in the Arctic. And then the second activity is a little more hands-on, less graphing, but it's creating a solar oven. So using household materials, shoe boxes, plastic wrap, aluminum foil, tape, scissors, and a thermometer. Students will be challenged with creating a box that gets as hot as possible. You can kind of do it as a group activity and have that thermometer throughout the day and see how the temperature increases over time. You can have them create it and then take it home and challenge them to do something like roast a s'more in it or heat up a slice of pizza. We actually do this with our campers here, and we do it with s'mores. They set them up and then they're surprised with s'mores when they go check on them the second time. So a really fun activity. Kids get really into designing those, and it helps them practice those science skills of creating a model, testing it out, making adjustments, especially if they're taking it home and testing it out at home. And again, the only real tool that you'll need to have on hand for this are those thermometers. Both activities do relate to looking at temperature and the impacts of temperature on 1, the ice, and 2, our ovens. So again, these are the images that you'll have access to. So this grid looks at 1980, students will be asked to count how many of these squares have more than half, as opposed to more than half of it covered in ice. So you can see like this square right here, obviously all of it is covered in ice. This square right here probably wouldn't count because very little of it is covered in ice. And then taking those numbers and plotting it. And just from looking here, you can see that it went from about 12 whole squares, maybe 14, 15 squares to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. And then as you graph that, you kind of see the downward trend of the sea ice in the Arctic. Down here, you see our campers with their solar ovens with the s'mores. So again, part of this activity includes using different colored sheets of paper, so black paper, white paper, and seeing how color impacts temperature. Using different materials, aluminum foil, does it reflect heat or does it retract heat? Plastic, does it trap heat? So kind of testing out a few different things and seeing what gets your oven to be as hot as possible. So while I have you here, I am going to pause the screen sharing because I feel like we have not shown you what the lesson plans look like. And I know that I took a sneak peek into our slideshow and noticed that we didn't have that. So I'm going to share a slideshow. Just give me 1 second, sorry. I'm actually going to take us back to the 3rd through 5th just to show you what each of the lesson plans will look like. Did I share the right screen? No, I didn't.
No, I think we are
Sorry.
seeing your notes.
Okay. Let me stop sharing. Here we go. Click the wrong link. All right, now you see a skill sheet, right?
Yes.
All right, so each lesson plan will include the materials you'll need, the skills and concepts it covers. The in the field section will talk about how the science is used by scientists in the field and how it impacts animals. Directions on facilitating the activity, and then these guiding questions that will help support the learning. All right, sorry, Nadia, I went rogue there. All right, with animal genetics, we will be talking about how scientists study DNA to learn more about population sizes, the different numbers of unique individuals in a space, as well as understanding relationships between the animals that they look at. So students in the first activity will determine population using DNA from scat samples. And that'll help them identify the number of individuals in a pack of wolves. We did choose Isle Royal for this, which is an island in Michigan. For some of you who are from the up north, I'm sure are familiar with it. And then for the other activity, we're looking at those same DNA scat samples to determine family relationships between wolves using those genetic markers. All right, so you'll receive a map for the first activity that looks like this. It has the scat samples of 14 scat samples. For those of you who aren't familiar with scat, it's essentially poop. So scientists will go out and collect this information and then figure out the DNA. Looking at different DNA markers, you're able to identify who is a unique wolf and who isn't. So I have 3 samples here. You can see that they all have the same marker here, which is fine. Sometimes you do share traits with other people. Other times you don't share traits with other people or other wolves. So your DNA will look different. So you'll see there's a difference between this sample right here and this sample right here. Between sample 1 and sample 2 on the second line, and that lets you know that this example 1 is a unique individual while example 2 is another unique individual. So going on to compare example 2 to example 3, you'll see that every single one of these markers down the row are exactly identical. So chances are these come from the same wolf. And you can ask students, and I will ask you right now, how is it possible that we got DNA from the same, got the same DNA from 2 different samples? I'm going to let somebody drop it in the chat here if you know the answer. How is it possible to get the same exact DNA from, so essentially sample 3 and sample 2 have the same exact DNA? What do you think? How is it possible that that is the case? Yep, right there, Kristen, you got it. Identical wolves is the rare answer. You know, just like humans, identical wolves are not possible. The more not likely, the more likely answer is that it's the same wolf and it just happened to poop twice. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again. This time I will choose the right link to show you guys a little more and have you take a look at it. So again, here's that skill sheet we talked about, or the lesson outline that you'll receive for every single lesson. And then this example here. So each DNA, each column is the DNA of one wolf. So having facilitated this with students, sometimes they make the mistake of thinking each row is a different sample, and you just really want to emphasize that this entire thing is the sample of one wolf, and that all of these just refers back to different genetic markers or different traits. Each band, it represents, didn't mean to click next. Each band is a DNA marker which represents a special trait. These traits, like all DNA, are inherited from parents. And then the samples are identical because more than likely they came from the same wolf. Again, you can't rule out that they're twins, but the more likely answer is that they're the same wolf. So I'm going to have us practice right here. And I want you to tell me, oh no, this is our second activity, sorry. So our second activity refers to how genetic markers are passed on from parents. So in this activity, you'll be looking at example 2 right here and trying to determine if example 1 and example 3 are mom and dad to this offspring right here. So what you're looking for is for each of these genetic markers to come either from mom or dad. Wolves, like humans, can't just get DNA from anywhere, get genetic information from anywhere. It has to come from either mom or dad. So you'll see in the first row, it comes from who? Just drop it in the chat or unmute and tell me.
That's mom.
That's mom, yep. Dad there, and then you can go all the way down and see that all through every single one of these markers comes either from mom or dad. So chances are sample 2 is the offspring of sample 1 and 2. Now on this next slide, we're going to try again and go ahead and tell me if this is an offspring or not. Is example 5 the offspring of dad and mom? Oh. Right, so you see right there, this color right here is different than these two, which represents a different genetic marker. So that indicates that the offspring did not this wolf is not their offspring, because it's not possible to just get DNA information from random. It has to come from mom or dad. So you'll receive the 14 samples, and then you'll also receive about, I think, 9 or 12 of these so that you can play these games. I will say, I'm going to stop sharing now. Nadia, you can go back to sharing. I will say that with the identical samples, there are 14. So the best way to go about it is to cut them all out so that they're able to move them around and have the ones that share like maybe the first 3 or 4 together so that differences are easier to spot. When they're static on a piece of paper, it's harder to compare like sample 1 to 14. So definitely cut them out and do that and allow yourselves the flexibility to move things around.
I will just add that I have not done that lesson before, but it looks like a really good brain game. So if anyone's into puzzles or challenges, I think that's a great opportunity for students who like that kind of mind work, brain games, to really be engaged in something that's, again, meaningful, right? They're making connections. They're using STEM in their everyday lives and being able to see how that relates to humans as well as animal genetics.
And then this is one where a book recommendation or just a theme recommendation that we have to share is some wolf moose study that's happening on Isle Royal. The wolves there's a lot of inbreeding happening. It gets very complicated. And it's super interesting. So definitely recommend students just continue the learning by studying what happened on Isle Royal. You'll get into like, I think at one time, the only wolves on the island were a mother, a father who was also her father. So she inbred with her father, and they produced a child. And there was also like a half sibling in there as well. So it was just a lot of inbreeding happening, and that's kind of what ended up affecting the population of wolves on the island.
Mm-hmm. And that's another way to engage students, right? If they're maybe not necessarily super STEM heavy, that's a kind of human story. We call it an ethical dilemma, right? Should humans be involved? Is this a case where humans should try and fix it, or should we let nature take its course? You can kind of get into politics, but it's more about like policy writing. What should humans do? And how do you move those ideas forward? So again, for people like me who are more like writing heavy, another opportunity to engage with them and have them get the same ideas, but in a different kind of way. All right, so that is it for our lessons today. But if you have done activities with us before, you know that we have done this in previous years. So these resources are already available. We have resources from 2022 from the Oceans of Possibilities theme, as well as All Together Now, which was last summer's theme. So if you're looking for some inspiration or things to do in the meantime, we'll send out these resources since they're already pre-made while you wait for the resources on April 1st that come from this year's bundle. We are also looking into hosting an informal education professional development here at the zoo. So we'll be sending out more information on that probably over the summer, but be on the lookout. Just know that that's coming up sometime in fall of this year. And then if you're interested in in-person programming, we would love to hear from you. We have on-site programming for Tri-County libraries, so those in Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne counties. This summer and into the fall, we'll be piloting some mobile van programming. So us on the road, taking different lessons and activities to libraries and other community events. So if that's something you're interested in, if you're part of the Tri-Counties, please feel free to reach out to us. We have a variety of themes and a variety of formats as well. If you're looking for quick little activities or an hour-long lesson, all of those will be made available pretty soon. So be on the lookout for that as well. Again, if you're interested, please do reach out. And then from your end, we would love to hear from you guys. So we're going to make this Google form available. If you do choose to do any of the activities that we've outlined here today, we would really love for you to share that information with us. So you can check which activities you used over the summer once you get to it, the amount of youth participants that you engaged with, and adult participants as well, and just a total tally of everyone that you engaged with at your library. And that helps us get those numbers out there. That helps us show the reach that the Detroit Zoo has, which is really, really important for us. So if you could please fill those out, we would greatly appreciate that. All right, we are at 2:40. We'd love to open it up for questions if anyone has any. Feel free to drop them in the chat or to unmute.
And while folks are maybe typing in any questions, I'll just verbally confirm what's happening in the chat is that I'll send out the links and resources to the last couple of years. In the chat is also a link to our recorded webinar archives where we still have the zoo. I believe last year's is still up on our webinar archives. And if you dig through our YouTube page, you will find the one before that as well. So we'll make sure we get all that out to you as well as the April resources once they're published.
Oh, I see a question from Peter who's asking about the flamingos. Do you have any photo sets for counting for them? We do not currently, but that's a great idea. Birds are a pretty kind of easy animal to capture. So I can look into that. Thanks for that suggestion.
Yeah, and of course, all these zoo activities are great year round, not just in summer, but we love that you can tie into our theme and everything. So there's another question for you guys in the chat from Crystal there.
Oh, I see. Is the Detroit Zoo offering programming libraries can book this summer at their library? Great question. We are piloting our very first activity kind of lesson this spring. So we'll have more information about kind of the frequency in which we can offer the mobile van programming after that happens. So I will keep
If
you
you are
posted, but the
interested,
goal is yes.
yeah, if you are interested, reach out and we'll kind of have a list of libraries who are interested and kind of go down from a first come, first serve and try to hit as many as we can this summer.
Actually, do you guys have a slide with your email?
If only we had thought that through, Kathy.
I'm going to add it to the first slide and then you can share.
Thanks, Zara.
I can also get that out. I have your emails. We enjoy looking at the flamingos anyway.
I figured this one might be a little more engaging. But thank you, Zara, for adding our emails. That's a great point too.
Do you want to just put it in the chat?
Sure thing.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I really want to thank our colleagues here at the Detroit Zoo for joining us today. We really appreciate your support and engagement with libraries. And again, thanks to the Institute of Museum and Library Services for supporting this webinar. I'm going to post one more time our survey in the chat, and I look forward to seeing everyone at our next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ladies.